Later that day.
I've now changed my mind to dolphin.
No, but what we are doing is we've already recorded. And
Yes.
recording on the Odyssey that I like to call the Maudecast, the fifth journey to the further reaches of unexplored space.
5.0.
Exactly. 5G. Turning your brain into a lizard brain as we speak.
Burn it down.
Should I do the song?
Yes.
Oh, Maude, it's a mud flame cast. Ooh, she's a streaming and a booster villain. She a ghost from Simpsons TV show, flavorless ice cream eater. But did she ever make that flavor? Super secret, sexy moonshine maker, objectified next door neighbor, Maude, piggybacking on the success of mainstream phenomenon Simpsons TV show. Woo! How about that one? That was a little bit of a variation there.
Yeah, it was good. I have realised the ice cream thing that you put in there that I told you. It's not ice cream. It's something like low-fat ice milk. It's like a step or two down on the rung from ice cream.
Low-fat
ice cream works.
Low-fat ice milk. So, the Maudecast, as I just said in our second theme tune, piggybacking on one of the most successful TV shows of all time. We got to make a promise because last time, Nathan, we went ridiculously long. So what are the new rules? Yeah,
the new rules are, if we have clips to talk about, don't introduce 3 to 4 new segments before we get to those clips, so that it's not 58 to 64 minutes before we're talking about what everybody's here for.
Excellent. So, without further ado, segment 1. What is the episode that we're going to be talking about today in this Maude Flanders podcast, the Maudecast?
Today's episode is Season 3, Episode 3, or if you're on Disney Plus, Season 3, Episode 2. Because we don't talk about MJ anymore. When Flanders Failed, and this episode is about Ned opening his business and Homer, once again, in an awful move, wishing him every failure, which ultimately comes true.
But not the failure of death. That's a step too far.
Yeah, he still has some kind of line of, no, that's too far.
So, are you familiar with the work of Jacques Derrida?
The philosopher.
Yeah, the postmodernist philosopher who was very much interested in the idea of deconstruction.
I am. Everything is nothing and everything is something.
Exactly, unless that's Foucault. But as you know full well, my attempt is to make this into a Cerebus-style show that goes from a very flippant show about a silly character into a very, very serious dissection of a religious, loving, and sassy character. So, in terms of that deconstruction, on a scale of 1 to very, how vivacious are your notes today?
In the spirit of deconstruction, I have no notes.
Oh, because everything's open to interpretation.
Yes, well, everything... I can't remember what deconstruction is very well, but I did. If everything is something, then everything must be nothing. So if I do notes, those notes rely on the context of the world still turning. And I don't like to rely on things, so no notes.
We're in free fall.
Which is interesting.
This is a Nathist interpretation of a Flanders travesty.
Yes, and what's interesting is in the last episode I did have some notes, and it was way more of a loose mess.
A hot mess.
Yes, a good mess.
It was a John Good mess. It was a 60-minute John Good mess, and that's already out there in the interwebs very soon in the future and in the past. Now, here's something. Our uncle, Statman John, left me a message. I don't know if you've been following the data on or whatever, but we now have 3 episodes up on the interwebs. And the Statman, he sits there from morning till night crunching those numbers. So here's a message he left me earlier in the week. Beep. I think Nifflin and Brennan, the other boy, I think what you did on the internet is one of the best things that is even out there, like a man doing black backflips off a motorbike or spraying hot cream I spit hot cream cheese into his mouth and nose holes. And you want to know what I saw about your data and your stats? I saw you episode number #2. I saw you getting, and count these, 166 votes from the internet. And that's amazing for me to see any time of day, night or day, when I get up and go and go to sleep. But you know what, Nathan and Brendan, you know what? One dirty man, he left me a thumbs down. I went into the internet and I punched the internet hard. I said, you know, you don't give the thumbs down to my best nephews and nieces. I'm going now. Give internet another kicking. Beep. So, what do you think of that?
He's passionate. He's definitely got our back.
He's very passionate. I don't necessarily think it's about us. I just think he doesn't like that internet disrespect. I've seen him go this way about follow mac cheese recipes. He has a playlist of mac cheese recipes. He goes up and down it every day. And I've seen him. I saw him once set fire to his entire kitchen suite over a mac cheese video that had two downward votes.
That's not good. I would like to know who the thumbs down came from and why. I would like some constructive criticism that we can laugh in the face of.
Yeah, well, I can't say I didn't do them, but it's a whole different ballgame. 166 views for episode 2. Did you even dream of a Maudecast hitting those heights?
No, I don't even think I can count to that level of success. So I'm happy.
Yeah. So I mailed the Maude Flanders band from last time, and they let us put the Maude Flanders video on the end of the episode, which is cool. Already that's gone out. And yeah, the dude seemed quite nice. He seemed quite into it. So thanks, Maude Flanders singer, although you're an instrumental band. But thanks for that.
Yeah, I enjoyed the music that they presented. And yeah, I've watched that video a couple of times now.
I watched it a few times for fun as well. It actually works remarkably well.
Yeah, it's a good piece of Maude art.
It is a good piece of Maude art. Today there's no Maude art because there's literally no way in the 60 minutes we've given ourselves that we're getting to any Maude art, and we do want to do some spectral speculations. Now, keep my eye on that clock. That's why I'm speaking so quick, lickety-split, going through my notes. Here's something I realised. Maude, Marge, Maude and Marge, the only difference is Maude has a UD in the middle and Marge has an RG in hers, but they're more or less the same name other than that. But what could it mean?
That's good. I didn't know that. I think it might be blissful coincidence because I have the feeling Maude is named by the Simpsons writers after the Harold and Maude. Now
you've mentioned this before. I believe. You've mentioned this before. I've never seen the movie Harold and Maude. Have you seen that film?
No, I thought it was a TV show, but then there is also a TV show called Maude with B. Arthur, isn't there? Maybe I'm just confusing the two things.
Well, you know what? B. Arthur in Maude does look a bit like Maude Flanders.
Maybe we're putting some things together.
But
yeah, I don't know where I feel like maybe it was a commentary or something, but I'm pretty sure that's an official, I haven't just made it up kind of fact.
Random stuff. Very weak. A week too late. Here's something that you said on the 23rd of October 2011. Maude Flanders is probably the least important character in the history of television. Would you want to defend that comment in a segment I called Stand By Your Flan?
Sure. This must be what it feels like to be famous and have your Twitter hacked. Where's this come from?
So I typed in Maude Flanders into Facebook, and yours, after about 3 people who'd named their page Maude Flanders, some of whom I will dip into at various points, but you then popped up in this stream with several quotes, gold quotes, and I'll spread them out over the next few episodes. But this one, Maude Flanders is probably the least important character in the history of television. Now, have I caught you out there?
No, I believe that would be I don't know, I think that somebody else wrote that in a bid to make me look foolish. Just like a jovial hack.
Here's one. Where did you get your source from that Maggie Roswell only wanted $4,000 extra for a pay increase?
I got it from the same place I get most of my sources. I probably read that 3 or 4 years ago, forgot the number, kept the number 4,000 in my head, and then repeated that to you as fact.
Oh, so you got it from up your own arse.
Yeah. Yeah.
Basically.
Yes.
You got it from the nonsense news. The nonsense news. Probably from David Icke's Ikeatorium.
Yeah. What is the number then?
I've no idea. I just wanted to get you to quote your sources. I wanted to call you on that one because I wondered where you got that number from.
I do think, like, having said that and finding out that now you have nothing to debunk that, I'm going to stick with it.
Those are not the kind of things that people throw about anyway, so it's unlikely that she went about bragging. I only wanted $4,000 a week for, like, saying 3 lines over the phone. Say, Roswell, really? You think that Maude Flanders saying, oh, here, I brought some club sandwiches for you. Oh, here's a chicken wishbone. Be careful. That's worth $4,000. Oh, jog on, Roswell. Jog on. That's what I say.
In her defence, she would have loved to do it over the phone, but they wouldn't let her. So it meant travelling from another state, maybe Colorado, to California to do it. To say,
right next week.
Well, would you make that flight to say, here's your club sandwiches?
Yeah, because, bear in mind, this 4,000 you're saying she wants extra, she's probably already getting like at least 40 or 50 pounds for doing the job initially. They probably even pay her bus fare.
A plastic bag full of snacks.
And your BFH, your bus fare home. You know what, Nathan? So this week at the MFIMTPHC Book Depository and Hotcake Restaurant, Worsley Mains Netto, just off Worsley Mains Netto, I was offered my job back as a park cleaner, and I'm seriously considering the option now that the museum it's in dire straits, isn't it? To be honest.
Yeah, I'm thinking we should just shut the whole place down.
Now, this next piece of information might make you change your mind. So that we put the Sphinx, the giant gold Sphinx that was delivered by mistake, we threw it in the River Duggy with the hope that the face would be eroded and nobody would know. It seems like us bragging about that on our podcast might have left us in some hot water, because I've received this letter from the council. Dear Mr. and Mr. O'Leary, we would like you to appear before the Wigan magistrate on the charge of gross littering and the flooding of the homes of several elderly residents of Worsley Mains, Wigan. So it appears, Nathan, that we have been caught and we need to go to court tomorrow morning. So how do you feel about that?
We knew it was going to happen after we spoke about it last time, so I'm ready.
Well, don't start loosening your belt just yet, because I've also had another letter from a solicitor's firm representing Stamp, the 82-year-old night watchman who you left riding a roller coaster for 6.5 days, I believe. I didn't leave. He's seeking $250,000 damages for mental, physical trauma. Would you like to respond to that?
No comment.
So we're in a bit of hot water there. Go on.
He knew what he was signing up for, and we've had this conversation many a time in the last 3 weeks, except for when he was stuck on the ride. But it's not going to happen, and he knows it's not going to happen, so he's just wasting his own money.
Wasting his own time and money because he hasn't got a leg to stand on, has he, old Stamp?
And at 82, the clock's running out. I'm 30. I can wait him out.
Well, you know what? I did get a message from Stamp last night. It was about 3 o'clock in the morning. I'll just play it for you. Now, bear in mind, he thinks this is your phone, which is why he keeps saying Nathan when he phones up. He doesn't know that this is my phone. So, beep.
Nathan, I am outside your house right now with an handful of stones, and I'm going to throw it in your bin and fill your bin up with stones so that when you go in the morning to put your bin bag and stuff in, there'll be no room left in your bin. So, the joke is on you.
Beep. That's the message.
Great. Okay, I did wonder why the bin was so heavy, but there's nothing I can do about him. He's just going to keep doing what he does, and eventually he'll die.
I mean, if your actions towards him are anything to go off, it'll be sooner rather than later, and he will die a pauper.
Good.
I was going to mention the Côte d'Ivoire sister museum, and the boss, Mr. Yves Kouame, got in touch with it, but I'll save that for next week because I want to respect our new rules. I'm going to skip over the real facts. I'm going to even skip over the who, when, what, why, how cast. I'm going to skip over a week too late, except for this bit. So you mentioned an inflatable gorilla and baboons, which you subsequently edited out of the podcast, but I'm still going to refer to it. Now, you claimed this gorilla was a Christmas gorilla on top of Maude Flanders' house at Christmas, but it wasn't, was it? Would you like to save face and tell us what it actually was?
Yeah, it wasn't anything of the sort. It was what I've thought of is a inflatable balloon on the Simpsons Tapped Out game, which the connection was, in my game, it was near the Flanders house. So I, again, remembered something vaguely and taken it as solid fact. Told you that at least one of the houses, the Simpsons or the Flanders, has a gorilla. That I know for sure. But that's not true. It was a Homosaurid gorilla riding a sleigh in a dream sequence, and then the Tapped Out game used it as a decoration.
Exactly.
So that's it.
Yeah, from season 24, episode 9, so very late in the day. Now, the reason why I've punished you by including this is because I had spent about 15 minutes scouring the interwebs and looking at tiny pictures of Ned Flanders' roof to see whether the Christmas decorations had a gorilla.
Yeah.
They did not.
No.
Anyhow, I'm going to skip over the stuff about Maude's mum and dad. And again, this is a Schwarzwälder episode. I think this one is, and I think the last one was as well. I'm even going to skip over the Maude letters and comments, but I'd like to come back to those towards the end because we got some awesome letters and comments.
Good.
Let's get to content and see how we do with it. All right.
Yes.
So we're sticking to our business, and we're about 15 minutes in, and we're getting to content, the meat of why all those internet listeners and users are right here in the Maudecast, the best, second or third best damn Maudecast in the biz after the Filipino band Maudes video podcast series, Maudecast.
Yes.
Go watch those. Pause this now. Go watch their 10 episode video podcast, then come back and listen to the rest of this show. So what do you think about that? All right, episode.
I think it's a good idea.
So, what did you mean about them not liking Michael Jackson anymore? Is that the one where the kind of mental patient pretends to be Michael Jackson, but it's really Michael Jackson?
Yeah, they got rid of that.
Really? So
it doesn't exist in the...
That's a pretty good show, but you know, people don't really talk about Jackson so much, do they? Anyway. When Flanders Failed, Maude's supportive wife role. Do you want to give us some context? What we did it, I think.
Sure. She's in this one quite a lot, and she is just very supportive. There's no, from what I can see, there's no villainy this time around, and this is a first season 3 appearance.
Okay. So clip 1, we open the first reference to the Flanders is Lisa Simpson sitting at the breakfast table, I think, and she says Flanders are having a beefathon. That is a barbecue, and she has a very nicely designed invitation that says BBQ with the Flanders, and it has little cute cartoons on the front of Maude and Ned. Now, do you think Maude drew this? Because I heard somewhere that Maude likes drawing.
That was my theory. That was going to be my point for this, is that I think you find out later, post-death, post-mortem, that she was a sketcher. So I get the impression that this is a Maude number.
It's pretty cool.
But I think that Ned came up with the like slang, the slogans for the food are very Ned. Which
are, of course, incredible Nedibles. And Mordacious Victuals?
Yeah, I don't know what a victual is.
No, I don't know. You know, maybe we'll find out next week in a segment we call A Week Too Late. But right now, we've no idea what a victual is. Incredible Nedibles and Mordacious Victuals. Is there a joke that we're missing?
Maybe. I included this as the first clip purely because to talk about the drawing speculation. But it's a nice setup to what's going to happen. There's going to be a Flanders barbecue.
Yeah. And he mentions that this is another Schwarzwälder episode. He's the daddy. He probably wrote more than anyone else, I'm imagining.
Maybe.
Numbers. So Lisa is reading them in Incredible Nedibles, and then we cut to the Flanders garden, Rod, Todd, Maude, and a bunch of other just totally random people, none of whom I could work out were characters. The Lovejoys were not there. The Hibbets were not there. It just seemed like a random selection of people.
Yeah, the Martin Prince's parents are there, but outside of that, I don't remember recognising anybody.
There's a dude with blue glasses who they did something to make his glasses blue, and I never saw him again. Is he a person, do you think?
Did he speak? Was he the guy who said something to Ned?
I don't know. Don't remember.
No. Well, that was one of the guy with the glasses who I'm thinking of was Martin's father, and he had a line.
No, then I don't think it's that dude. So Neddy introduced it, and he says, "I've got you here for a sinister reason." He doesn't say the sinister. He doesn't do it in that voice. And he then says that sinister actually means left-handed, and that's true. I actually did some research because it was right there. I thought I'll look it up, and the reason why is because a few weeks ago I was looking at a coat of arms, and I remember they called it the Sinister Dexter, and I couldn't remember why it was called Sinister, and I looked it up. Of course, it's Latin for left, but also it was interpreted as being evil or unlucky. So sinister actually just means left. But back in the old days, if you happen to be a lefty, like me, I am a lefty, like 1 in 9 Americans. Are you a lefty?
As am I.
We're both lefties. There you go.
Yeah, and so was I think Kieran and my mum are right-handed, me, you and Dad are left-handed.
True. Actually, yeah. That's a good one. I forgot.
The reason for the whole left-handed stuff is because Matt Groening is also left-handed.
Yeah, there was some good lefty stuff in there. My favourite one was when the dude says, you smudge everything. Your writing gets smudged. Ned says that, right? Then he says, your writing gets smeared, and it does. I have to write in like a ridiculous fashion with my head cocked and my paper turned like 90 degrees so that I don't drag my hand across my my writing.
Yeah, people often tell me I hold a pen like a crab would hold a pen. Yeah, this is not enough about Maude.
It's true. So one thing I did notice is when Ned was talking, we got a side view of Maude, and her upper lip is incredibly long. It's like 3 times as long as anyone else at that table.
Yeah, they do have that kind of design for her from the side, that she does have quite a extended. I noticed it in the screenshot of when her and Ned arrive at the party, and you said she looked quite goofy. She had quite a long.
Yeah, exactly. So when you see her from 3/4 or a side, she does have that kind of like and almost like Goofy the character, with that long kind of coincidence, right?
Yeah, I feel like it's some kind of cartoon trait of attractiveness. The same with the eyes and the nose. Like, I think it's hard to make. I've heard them talk about this before, like, because the Simpsons are so cartoony looking, it's hard to make someone look attractive, so they always go for the same like eye shape and nose shape, and kind of, because Helen Lovejoy has a similar long face.
The pointy, so I think the pointy thing seems to be a little bit more attractive, so they want to make, maybe, the Simpsons are all very round, aren't they? They wanted to make Maude at least quite pointy.
Yes, in comparison to Ned, Rod and Todd, who look very round.
So here's the thing. So it turns out that Flanders has been a pharmacist for 10 years.
Yeah.
But that means Neddy was like 50 before he became a pharmacist or whatever, but let's ignore that fact. Here's my question. So Ned was a pharmacist. He would have obviously had to go to some kind of medical training school. Do you think Maude was a pharmacist or something to do with the medical industry at some point in the past? Is that how they met?
Fascinating, but I imagine when he says something like the pharmaceutical game, doesn't he? So I imagine just like a boring kind of menial role. I didn't expect him to be like kind of not a pharmacist as such, but maybe just sort of like a pill pusher, or like a higher up member, a higher up employee in maybe like a factory or something. But no, I don't think Maude had a hand in that pie.
What makes you think that?
I don't know. Instinct.
Just pure instinct, pure animal instinct that Maude at no point studied medicine. Do we know what she studied, if anything?
I don't think we know, or we don't know if she did study.
Well, I'm sure at some point in a segment we call Spectral Speculations, we will be thinking about her university or college or kindergarten study. But for now, let's move on. So Neddy burns his tie on the barbecue. How does Maude feel about this big leap? Like Neddy's leaving his job. This is a big risk, and they don't seem like a risk-taking family. Neddy's burning his tie. He's opening up this store that we find out about. Yeah.
Yeah, she looks generally content the whole way through. She doesn't look like there's no concern like there was with the golf game. She just looks very trusting of the situation. It doesn't look like she's got any worries. And remember, the last time we saw her properly was the falling backwards for the trust fall. So maybe she's just continuing that tradition of she believes in Ned.
She believes in Ned, and they must have. He saved his cash over those 10 years, but they've been raising 2 boys during that time. And Maude doesn't look like, although we do find out later with the investorette that I just found out about this week that I'd totally forgotten about, that she definitely has some business acumen, but we've never seen her work or hold down a full-time job, have we?
No, not to my knowledge, no.
So they've been surviving and thriving on Neddie's pharmaceutical income. And, we may find out more about that at some point, but maybe not. We may have to speculate. But she looks like she's very happy. She's clapping along. She's supportive. And she's ready for this risk. Maybe it's not a risk, but it looks like later that it might have been because bad stuff goes down pretty quickly. And so anyway, I like the joke about left-handed zithers. I know he was talking about left-handed apple cores and to left-handed zithers. I thought that was very good. Is Maude left-handed?
I don't know. She doesn't. I don't think it's mentioned in this episode, and they mention a lot of people in this episode being left-handed. So I think if she was, she would have said that she was in this episode.
Well, here's the thing. Later, when we see her at the till, the cash register, she's typing in the numbers, and which hand is she using?
I don't know. Is she using her right hand?
I don't know either. But we can go and have a look and check it out, and we can report back in the segment we call A Week Too Late next week. That's our homework, he says with glee. Anyway,
that's also the third thing now that we've said. We'll find out and tell you next week.
Well, that's good. That just shows that we're digging deeper. We're at the very limits of our Maude knowledge, but yet we press on. And anyway, it's interactive, isn't it? Because that means the listener can get out there and they can check and they'll be like, I found out before even they did. But the joke's on you, listener, because this is pre-recorded. It's not live. So by the time you're listening, we've already done our homework. So boo sucks. Clip 3. Maude offers Homer and Ned a wishbone, chicken wishbone. Here, you two make a wish. And she spreads her arms out, hey, this is great. It's fun, she says to Homer. Homer's not happy about that. I'm not sure why, because I haven't seen the rest of the episode. And Maude just stands there with a goofy smile. So what's that all about?
Yeah, I do like that Homer doesn't really have any reason to say no. He just doesn't want to. He just doesn't want to participate in because beforehand he didn't want to go to the barbecue and eventually he ended up there because of the smell of the meat. But so he's just trying his best to just not have fun. And Maude even says, come on, it's fun.
She does say, come on.
Which is very un-Maude, really, to say, come on, it's fun.
Well, we did talk a while back about how Maude wasn't really into fun. We don't see her out there thrill-seeking, but she does like this. And, in some ways, this could be seen as either gambling or a belief in magic.
True. And she does have a line much later on, season 6 or 7, where she says, Neddy doesn't believe in gambling. Neddy doesn't believe in insurance. He considers it a form of gambling. So they're not gambling people, even though the golf episode was also about gambling.
Yeah, it seemed like they talk a lot about not being into gambling, but they're happy to just do anything, including gamble their entire house on a left-handed store in a mall.
Yeah, and he goes to Vegas eventually too.
So not a lot of consistency there in the Flanders words and actions. So they persuade Homer to crank the wishbone, and Homer wins, and so he starts wishing on what he wants to win, and he wishes that President Simpsons wins the Super Bowl, and then he gets angsty because he's been forced to rush. Ned's forcing him to rush his wishes, and he says, "Keep your pants on, Flanders." And Maude is in wide-eyed astonishment at this, Homer turning and just getting right in their grills. Yeah, he does it. Homer does it all the time. Why does Maude continue to be astonished by this behavior?
Well, I did think that. I thought that she's already come over and said, come on, do this, and he just said nah in her face. No, that wasn't polite to begin with. And yeah, there's past experience here that he spent most of last season looking at her top, yet here she was horrified. So yeah, maybe she just wants to see the best in people. So she's always willing to put it to one side and give him another chance, and then he just always ruins it.
He takes advantage of that. She turns the other cheek, and he simply takes advantage.
But he doesn't. There's no leering in this episode whatsoever.
Well, that's good. I mean, it's good that at least he's kept his eyes in his pants for once. So then he does wish that Flanders' leftorium shop, which I guess is now up and running, fails, and then he wishes that Ned was dead, and then he dials it back a little bit and says it's too much. But what I did wonder is that in his darkest moments, seeing as Homer's wishes do seem to be very powerful, do you think in his darkest moments that Homer wished that Maude was dead?
Yeah, and I think this is the beginning of the Flanders and death story that will happen throughout, because there's quite a few times where before she dies that the hints or implications that she might die. There's a few times where you can look into that. Like there's a family tombstone that says Maude Flanders on it years before she dies.
Wow.
Yes.
So there's a dark theme of death running through the Flanders line.
Yeah, she also speculates about what magazines they have in heaven. Maybe like 3 seasons before she dies.
Interesting.
There's a lot of stuff that we'll get to.
But we believe it wasn't planned, though, right?
No, I don't think so. I think it's all weird coincidences. But I like them. I like that they all add up to this sort of eventual death. But for now, yeah, I can see Homer. I don't even think it's particularly that dark for him. Like, if he's already thinking about Ned dying, why does it really matter? He likes Ned more than Maude in a way. Or he cares more about Ned than Maude.
Possibly. Who knows? So he wishes for Flanders' stupid shop to go out of business, and he rubs that in Ned's face. And what was interesting for me is the clips you sent me. You were laughing along at that. You were giggling and chuckling at that. So that
I was laughing.
Sorry?
Yeah, I was laughing at how he does it a couple of times where he just gets carried away with his own laughter. And I like that this time he chokes and Ned has to save him.
Yeah, because he's like Maude is watching Homer, and I think her at this point, the second time, her disgust is at Homer just having a mouthful of food and like laughing and mocking them for no reason whatsoever after her nicely giving him the chicken wishbone, and then Homer chokes and he needs to get the Heimlich maneuver from Neddy. But they don't wish ill on anyone, so they wouldn't want that.
No. What I've taken from this is, again, this is in their home too. So Maude's a very passive person. It takes a lot to rile her up in situations like, well, again, when Ned's around. But imagine a situation where if Homer was doing this at some kind of maybe girls' night that Maude and Helen were throwing, I can imagine Maude having a much different approach to the situation.
What would that approach be?
Just kick his ass.
She'd beat him with her handbag, wouldn't she? Like those old ladies on TV shows. Oh, you fiend, Homer Simpson! I'm sick of you, Homer. I'm sick of you, Simpson, with your filth.
Yeah, but here Ned just simply puts his hand around her and walks away.
They do. They look back at Homer, recovering from choking, and Ned once again saving Homer's life, which I'm sure he does several times in the show.
Which ultimately leads to the death of his own wife.
In what way?
Well, there's many butterfly effect moments. If Ned hadn't have saved Homer in this moment, Homer wouldn't have wanted the t-shirt cannon to be fired at him, and Maude would have later survived her.
Sure, there's that. Unless Maude's death is a fixed point in history, like in that Doctor Who episode where it doesn't matter what you do, it's still gonna happen.
Like Lost.
Yeah, all that stuff. Clip 4, Bart and Homer, they've got Ned's glasses on, Ned's hat, and they've got all of the Flanders furniture in their front lawn, which we find out later that Homer's bought for like $70 or something, 50 quid. And you said you sent this because of the t-shirts they're wearing, but I also noticed Homer's wearing in the world's greatest dad, and Bart is wearing Ned's glasses, and they're basically mocking Flanders, even though I imagine at this point his shop's completely filled, and that's why they have all this furniture.
Yeah, the scene before, I was going to send part of that, but it's really mean. It's Homer sees Ned selling all of his stuff on the front lawn, stops by, says that he's not going to buy anything because he's above that, then notices the barbecue that he wants, offers Ned $20 for it. Ned says that he paid $300 $100 for it. Homer then just taunts him for a minute until Ned eventually says, fine, you can have it for $20. Then Homer says, no, I don't want it. Now I want all of this stuff for $20, and just wears him down until Ned says yes. And then the next scene is sitting in the garden and laughing at it.
Yeah, they're mocking him. And the T-shirts. Tell me about the T-shirts.
Oh yeah, so Ned's T-shirt says Homer's T-shirt is Ned's, and it says Ned loves Maude, but Maude is spelled M-A-U-D, which is not the Maude spelling of this program. And then Bart is wearing Maude's T-shirt, which says Maude loves Nell, and Maude is now spelled correctly. This is in the same screen grab, so the same frame.
Yeah.
And so Maude says Maude loves Nell. Maude is spelled correctly, but Ned is spelled N-E-L.
See, that's intentional. So what's the joke here?
Yeah, I thought that it must be intentional they've done it, but I don't know. But the thought that I had was that maybe Maude was previously involved with somebody called Nell, and then I remembered that we've seen Ned and Maude have been married for a while. So maybe not, but that was my idea.
Yeah, the T-shirt, right? And then they wouldn't have had a matching T-shirt that did have Ned on it, but another one with Nell, so it doesn't make a lot of sense. It's also not a joke, but it is funny. It's just weird. It's just weirdly funny.
And again, T-shirts will play a major role in Maude's life at a later date.
Very good point. So, Lisa's very unhappy at this. She calls Bart a scavenger of human misery. Marge, however, doesn't seem that bothered. We won't get too much into that, but, there's definitely a rivalry there. It hasn't been that long since Maude chastised Marge for not joining in their protest. This is, 6 months to a year later, probably.
And also, it could be the day after.
It could very well be the same morning or the day after.
It could have been a week earlier.
I guess because that elastic time, it makes it very hard to know really what's going on in the world. So clip 5, the Flanders are all in their car. There's a welcome mat. The car's parked outside the Simpsons house. There's a welcome mat in front of the car door that says, welcome to Flanders country. And Maude, so Ned's outside. They've lost everything. The house has been lost and everything. So Ned's dressed up in like every piece of clothing he has, I think, to keep warm. Maude just a dress, so I'm not sure how that goes, but they're looking out, he's talking to Homer, and Maude is literally just looking at the window with a big grin on her face. What's going on there? I wrote WTF because I was like, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I noticed this. Maude, throughout this whole scene, is super chilled out. I think she, at the most, maybe she's putting on a brave face for Rod and Todd because she lights the candle with the cigarette lighter from the car and then joins in the sing-along that they do. But yeah, I'm going to say that she's putting on a brave face, but she doesn't look remotely concerned for her family's future. But she has faith. She has faith and trust. So she isn't, again, this isn't Marge worrying about Homer having to deal with this situation. This is Maude worrying about Ned.
So she has faith and trust not in the Lord Jesus, but she has that as well, but in Ned Flanders. She trusts Ned to get them out of this situation.
I think so.
Even though it does involve them going to live in Capital City with Ned's sister.
Another point that I'm glad you brought up, because Ned doesn't have a sister.
So Ned's not really got a plan, has he, at this point? They're just heading out into the darkness. But what happened with Maude's family that they didn't go to them? So Ned has been forced to invent a sister. Maude clearly knows Ned has no sister. This ain't her first rodeo. And yet Maude must have family somewhere. Or is Maude's family that far away?
I'm going to say that they're all of Maude's family are still back in North Dakota. And so in the long run, that's a plan. But for the night, it's probably easier to just sleep in the car.
Oh, yeah, but they said they're going there tomorrow, going to Capital City. How does Maude just generally feel at this point about this shit show?
I think she's, again, on the surface level, she's keeping it together. But again, we've discussed this Freudian desire that she has for self-destruction. So maybe there's a part of her that it's kind of, she's excited to see what happens next.
Really? So there's a little bit of a thrill in this wild ride that she may end up living under a bridge with her boys, with her Neddy and her boys. So she takes she's wearing a super nice dress, like a ball gown almost, and she takes the cigarette lighter and she turns around and holds it out to the boys who have marshmallows on sticks and hold the marshmallows over the lighter. They get cooked instantly. Did you notice that?
No, I didn't notice that. That's, again, some Simpsons wizardry. The dress, the black dress, it's from A Wonderful Life, the wife of the man who chooses to not kill himself.
Yes, George.
Yeah,
George
that's his wife's costume in that movie. And there's a bit towards the end, she does sort of like Maude does like a movement like this with her hands. And it's like a shot-for-shot like remake of a clip from It's a Wonderful Life. So that's why she's wearing this dress. But they committed to it for a long time.
Yeah, they don't just bring it in at the end, because you see the end of this episode is clearly a homage to It's a Wonderful Life, like the entire end. I didn't know that shot-for-shot thing was that. But interestingly, in my notes, I've taken a screenshot of all three poses she does in that scene: the hands by the face and the clasping hands. And I wondered if there was something, because it's a very specific set of movements, and they go right onto Maude's face in a face-forward Simpsons full on, and they hang on Maude for about 10 seconds, which is super weird considering it has no relevance whatsoever to the plot. So it's just an extended It's a Wonderful Life reference.
Yes. Yeah, so that's the whole thing with the dress. But yeah, in general, I think that she's handling it pretty well. I think she's a combination of blind faith and a sort of disregard for what happens to her and her family.
Some wild speculation there that she really thinks that there's a little bit of a thrill in possibly losing everything and seeing the whole world crumble around. Some mods just want to watch the world burn.
Exactly.
So here's something you told me, and so our show starts with the song "Go Tell It on the Mountain" and it ends with "I Got You, Babe," because you told me that Maude only sings 2 songs in the history of The Simpsons. And now I looked on fandom, and after my computer had clogged and shut down several times and I'd restarted because of all of the adverts on the fandom page, eventually I was able to access a page called Maude Flanders Singing, something like that, and it said there were 8 things on there, and you debunked all of those and said they weren't real. Now this one though, she's clearly singing.
Yeah, I still count this as let's not pretend that I forgot about this one. I remembered this one. I also remember that she's in the monorail. There's several times she's also in the Spring. We put the Spring in Springfield song, but unless I can hear her voice specifically and she sings a solo line, I don't constitute that as a singing appearance.
All right, this is a grey area though, because I listened carefully. I couldn't hear her voice. It definitely sounded like they just had Rod and Todd singing. However, she's definitely singing along, and there's only 3 of them, so you can't count it like an ensemble where there's 50 of them. So it's a grey area.
Maybe she's miming. Maybe she's lip syncing.
Just to let the boys take the lead.
Maybe she doesn't like her singing voice at this point.
Oh. Well, we'll see. I'm interested in what she is singing, which is Put on a Happy Face. You know, the grey skies are going to clear up. She's optimistic about Neddy turning this around.
And she is putting on a happy face.
She is. They all are. Even the boys. Or maybe they just don't know what's going on. They're a bit daft, aren't they, those boys? So Neddy says, "Homer, I'm ruined." And you can hear them singing in the background. Is that the only reason you put this clip in? Because you can hear openly in the street, these people singing this happy song?
Yeah, you can still hear the Homer and Ned are walking away from the optimism of the Flanders family to talk about the real world situation.
I like that.
Ned and Homer, again, to bring things back around to the side of Homer, who, if anybody listening to this and hasn't watched The Simpsons, I can see how they would struggle to see how Homer would be the likeable main character, given what the last 3 podcasts have been about, because he's just destroyed his family.
It wouldn't be hard to paint Homer as a villain in this piece. You would not have to cherry pick much to have Homer as just a stone cold rotter. But of course, it just so happens that every time he interacts with the Flanders, for the very nature of who the Flanders are, that Homer comes out worst because they're good. So we're going to see him at his worst every time he interacts with them.
Yeah, this episode started with him being livid because Marge said that the Flanders had things a little better off than the Simpsons. So that sparked the whole "I want him" fail thing, and up until this point now. But this scene's quite nice because they both cry and apologise to each other. Well,
this is the thing where Homer does get his chance at turning things around and making and kind of fixing things with Neddy. And he goes around and so. But I did like the line where I used to turn to the Bible, but even the good book can't help me. I sold it to you for 7 cents. So Ned's favourite thing in the world, probably the same Bible that Maude was underlining in the very last episode. Homer now owns it, and and it's almost certainly either in the fire or propping up a table somewhere.
Yeah, I'm interested to see of all the stuff that Homer bought from Ned in this episode, how much stuff does he get back? Or does that stuff all just stay with Homer now? Because Homer tends to borrow things from Ned and not give them back. So if he's paid for them, there's even less chance that he's going to be giving them back.
Yeah, there is an ongoing joke of that, isn't there? Of him just owning it, of taking everything from Ned. So this next one, clip 6, she went mad on the clips today. There's 8 clips, but 2 of them, especially this one, I wasn't sure. You're going to have to explain this to me. So Barney's lying on a table and gets a call. Flanders is in trouble and he laughs about it. And then some dude I don't know who jumps up and said, Ned Flanders is in trouble, and he runs out. Is this just one of the ones where we should speculate where Maude is at this time and what she's doing?
This one was more the Barney thing is he's laughing at the prospect of a t-shirt saying "Kiss me, I'm left-handed." He's not laughing at Ned's failure. Just to clear Barney in that sense.
Yeah.
But the guy, I just find it interesting that we don't know who this guy is at all. We've never seen him before. We don't see him at Maude's funeral. We don't know anything about him, but he's that willing to help Ned. So who is he? And he wasn't at the barbecue earlier.
Did he turn up at the shop at least?
I don't think so. Like, again, in the same way you made a point of those 3 Maude clips saying this must be something, like, is this guy I was wondering if it was like a character model of, like a different TV character from somewhere else, or is it just some unspecific man who really likes Ned Flanders?
It's weird, and it could be, again, It's a Wonderful Life reference, and maybe I haven't seen it for quite a few years, so maybe there is something when somebody calls. I can't remember if you find out how they get the people into George's house at the end, but anyway, we get to the last clip, a big one, and this is the It's a Wonderful Life homage. So Flanders going up the escalator, and Maude and Rod and Todd are standing at the very top of the escalator. The boys are waving their arms excitedly, and Maude is beckoning Ned. Hurry up, Neddy! It's a miracle! It's a Christmas miracle! It's not Christmas, though. And pure joy in the eyes of Maude.
Yeah, her faith's been restored. Again, her faith never went anywhere. This is why she was happy in the car. She's as equally happy now as she was in the car, because now her faith's been justified. But in a strange twist of fate, it was Homer Simpson and not Ned Flanders who managed to sort the problem out.
Yeah. So Homer has turned this ship around, and so he's got all the peeps in the shop. We see Apu, Barney, Edna Krabappel, Otto, and it's all here and it's all backwards. What are the chances of all these people, especially Mr. Burns, being left-handers, southpaws?
Well, yeah, a good percentage of Springfield are left-handed, and they do it's the leftorium stays for a long time. I think he might still have it, to be honest, but it carries on. I think not intently, but they don't switch back. The most interesting thing to me here is this is Maude's second appearance with Mr. Burns, seeing him just do something exceptionally nice.
Yeah, in the mall as well.
Yeah, so Maude's opinion of Mr. Burns at this point must be pretty good, so we should keep that in mind. And also, might be the first time we've seen Edna interacting with Ned and Maude, which, as we both know, will take a turn in the future.
It will blossom, but I mean, it's not Edna or Maude's fault of how things turned out, so I don't think. But is there an interaction later between ghostly Maude and real life Edna, or does that never happen?
There's no. I think they when Edna came into it, Ghost Maude sort of went away for a while, but then when the actress who played Edna sadly died, so they had to write Edna out, so they also killed Edna. So you see Maude and Edna's ghosts together quite a lot now.
Like a Star Wars thing, Force ghost thing.
Yeah, kind of, and it's kind of the way they've got around Ned being completely miserable in the new episodes. Like, they just sort of have him, you see him every now and again, and he can clearly interact him with the ghosts of Maude and Edna.
Oh, so he can see beyond the grave with his 2 dead wives.
Sometimes.
So Burns buys the car, $75K, I think it was, something like that, or even 175, it's hard to read. And Maude is looking on just slack-jawed. And then with elation, and this is where we see that shot-for-shot remake of the end of It's a Wonderful Life, which just leaps out as being weird because you just focus on Maude's face, and she puts her hands next to her face, then she puts her hands over her mouth, and then she clasps her hands like, oh, thank you, Lord.
It implies...
Later that day. Recording.
Good.
So, to jump back in, for the listeners who don't realise that actually we got thrown off, now it's 2 days later, to them, no time will have passed. But anyway.
No, 48 hours have passed.
In real world time, it's almost like a Simpsons thing, isn't it? Elastic time.
Yes,
Exactly. We're both 2 minutes older and 48 hours older at the same time. Boom. Mind's blown. So when we left it a second ago, Maude had just done that tribute to It's a Wonderful Life with the hands and the clasping hands. So we're almost at the end of the episode. Maude is watching on as Ned reaches out the hand of friendship to Homer J. Simpson, just like he did in the golf game a few episodes ago. But this time, thankfully, it's accepted. Now, making Ned Flanders the richest left-handed man in town. Now, is that true?
No, not at all, because Mr. Burns is still in the room, isn't he?
Exactly, and I think they missed a chance for a gag there. I would have gone to Mr. Burns, who at that time would have been like just dropping like bags of money on the floor or something like that. But, anyway.
Money fight.
Exactly. A Scrooge McDuck style money gun. But in a later episode they probably would, when they threw in a lot more Easter eggs, but this was still back in the 90s when they didn't expect people to be scouring over every cell in there. So Maude's looking on and smiling. She's one of the few people not holding a drink. Is Maude a drinker? Does she ever drink?
I don't think we've seen her drink. She wasn't visibly drinking at the Simpsons party a few weeks ago. She wasn't drinking then, I don't think. I can't think of a time we've seen her drink. So maybe she just doesn't drink.
So let's keep our eyes open to see if Maude ever likes Little Tipple. Obviously she drinks other liquids, otherwise she would have died much, much sooner than she did. And you might say, no, because she's a cartoon character. And now the sheer levels of narrative are taking me to Derrida levels, and we better dial it back a little bit so we don't go mad. She has big eyes, and sometimes you see Maude with the blue eyeshadow, which I won't touch on yet, but a listener did bring up how kind of weird it was that she always wore blue eyeshadow, but that's for another day. But she opens and you see her eyes, huge eyelashes.
She's shocked at how everything's transpired so well. Everything's gone very, very well, and even though she had faith in that, it's still, especially when Mr. Burns bought the car, she looked particularly, she can't hide. She tries, as much as she tries to hide her emotions in this particular instance, she can't.
No, it just spills out. The joy just spills out, hands clasped, and all the Flanders are swaying back and forth, side to side with the Simpsons, and they're all singing Slap on a Happy Grin. And Ned has almost turned his back on Maude, but maybe that's just how it's drawn. I don't think Maude's being forced out of that family scene. But still, no drink for Maude at the end. At no point does Maude pick up a drink to toast. But we'll say that maybe she just put it down, because I'm sure she would have at least held up a glass, even of lemonade, to celebrate Ned becoming the metaphorically richest left-handed man in town.
Yeah, this is the nicest Flanders ending we've had so far, in that both families have found some common ground now that Homer has stopped wishing every failure on Ned.
Yes. And so what do we take away from this episode?
This might be the start of them. This is sort of the start of them being friendly. Before this, they were sort of neighbours, and there's no friendship there, really. They were just next door neighbours, but this starts establishing that they kind of become friendlier over time, especially Homer and Ned, and Marge and Maude.
Interesting.
So I would say this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
So we're starting to get a little bit of depth in the friendship and the relationship between these two families, which is nice. Would you say this was the nicest ending to a Simpsons episode that features the Flanders?
It's probably up there. I can't think of many other particularly nice ones. It's quite nice. It's not as nice, but it's nice when Bart and Lisa think that Ned's killed her, and it turns out that he hasn't killed her.
I guess the relief of him not being a murderer is one thing, but this is the pure joy of a man's whole life being saved and turned around, and not least of all by Homer J. Simpson, a man who has so far been an absolute rotter to the Flanders family at every turn.
Yeah, I think this might be. Yeah, this is definitely one of the nicest ways it gets left, and it's not really. There's not it's not really played for any kind of joke either.
Well, it's a Wonderful Life's a schmaltzy kind of movie, and I do like it. It's super cheesy though. So this is basically, the Simpsons letting their cheesy side, which they do from time to time, just kind of schmaltzy, cheesy side, just totally go for it.
Yes, and you see that a lot less as time goes on. They stopped doing that quite early, to be honest. If that was maybe 3 or 4 years later, they would have thrown in some kind of ending gag. The only other nice-ish one I can think of is in the episode where Maude dies. And it ends with Ned sort of having found his faith again. But even that ends with, in the credits, there's a song that has a gag about Maud's death.
Yeah, so, and in that, again, as with the murder one, it is prefaced by some pretty bad stuff, whereas this is... although Flanders does lose his house in this episode. Probably not really due to Homer's wishing, unless it is magical. And was there anything else you wanted to add about this show before we move on to the next segment?
Yes, Ned. I think Ned Flanders might be one of the unluckiest characters on television. Just aside from the big stuff, which is 2 dead wives, each and every episode that focuses on him, it tends to have something really quite bad happen to him. Like, there's also like the hurricane and this with the business loss. And a lot of his appearances tend to be about something bad happening to him. Like, he didn't have a great childhood. And we've seen in future episodes, he also seems to go blind.
Yeah, his eyeballs fall out, don't they?
No, he just, that's a different episode, but about old people. But yeah, in the President Lisa episode, Ned is blind. The Flanders also, later on, the Flanders get a dog, but I don't think that's going to come in at any point, really.
Does something bad happen to the dog?
No, it was sort of one of the only nice things I could think that has happened to him that they bought. They give the Flanders family a dog maybe like 4 years ago.
I mean, I think the one thing is that he's so easy for just to have bad stuff happen to him because, first of all, he more or less just accepts all of it, and that's kind of amusing. Also, he's just such a nice guy, and I think they seem to find something amusing about bad things happening to nice people. Because bad things happening to Homer, they just happen all the time to Homer, but Homer just bumbles through life, whereas it's interesting to occasionally just have bad stuff will happen to Flanders and see what happens, which is generally him just, oh, darn diddly-oo, mosquito bites, fun to scratch.
Exactly.
Yeah. Shall we move on to a section we like to call spectral speculations?
Yes.
So this is where we conjecture about Maude's past. Now, we conjecture that her surname was Goodman. We conjecture that her Immaculate Conception led to her parents turning to religion, and that she made at least three Jesus-based wind chimes, one of which is hanging in her secret garden-themed garden. Today, I wonder if you'd like to speculate on... I'll give you 2 choices, actually. You can speculate on the Bible camp that Maude went to learn to be more judgmental that is mentioned in the show and speculate on what happened in that. But that's a little different because that's probably fairly recent. We don't know how recent. Or you can speculate on Maude's grandparents' arrival to the United States of America. Which one of those 2 appeals to you most?
I'm going to go for the second one, but I'm just going to address the first one briefly. The first one happens, that's where she is when Bart and Lisa think that Ned has killed her.
Ah, okay.
So that happens mid-season 6, mid-episode of the episode of season 6 that it's in. So
when we can speculate on that when we get to it, maybe. So it's a good choice. So Maude Flanders is, aka Maudlin Goodman, her grandparents arriving in the United States of America sometime around the turn of the century, I'm guessing. Just to give you a hint and a heads up. Tell us. Speculate away.
Which grandparents?
Oh, that's a good question. What's Maude's mom's maiden name?
Turnbull.
All right. So Marilyn Turnbull, her parents. I'd like to know about Marilyn Turnbull's parents arriving in the good old USA, Ellis Island, maybe even coming in via the old Statue of Liberty. Give us your weak, give us your tired, bumbling masses, and we'll piss on them, as Lou Reed said famously in one of his songs.
Well, I don't think that Maude's maternal grandparents ever moved to America. I believe they were always in America.
So
I believe
they're Native Americans is what you're saying.
Yeah, I think you could trace it back to a Native American heritage.
Interesting. So tell me a little bit more about her grandparents, the Turnbulls.
They lived in the state of Washington.
Interesting, the Pacific Northwest.
And they lived in a small logging town.
Was it Aberdeen?
No.
Because that's where Kurt Cobain came from. He was from Aberdeen, which was a logging town in Washington State. We're not from Washington State, as people may be able to guess. We're from Wigan, us, which is a long way from the USA.
Yes. No, I was more basing it on Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
There's something, I don't know. I know that there's a lot of, basically there's a lot of Native American stuff connected to Twin Peaks, so I thought, maybe Washington. And I would think they had a turbulent life.
The Turnbulls had a turbulent life around the turn of the 20th century. They're in Washington, in a little logging village. Tell us more.
Well, the father, Mitchell, very modern name.
Don't know. Maybe some listeners out there can tell us the origin of the name Mitchell.
He lost an arm. Meanwhile, the mother, Magdalena.
Okay. Are you just going to retell Twin Peaks now? Is there going to be a woman with a log appearing soon?
No, I did. I forgot about Mike with one arm in Twin Peaks, to be honest, briefly. But no, the mother lost a leg was the traumatic thing.
Okay.
Within weeks of each other. But they found a way to make it work, and then they gave birth to 8 children who became their arms and legs.
Did they actually use those children as their arms and legs, as in they strapped them to their torso?
Yes. Marilyn spent her first 7 years of her life as a leg.
As her mother's leg.
Yeah.
My goodness, this has taken a surreal turn, hasn't it? I'm going to give it one more minute to see where it goes. Okay, so they're up there in the Northwest in those brutal, brutal winters. And Marilyn is strapped to her mother's torso. What's her mother called?
Magdalena.
Oh, yeah, Magdalena Turnbull. And Madeline Turnbull strapped with leather straps or twine or branches. How is she strapped to the torso?
I think they're quite a poor family. Okay. So I imagine it would just be sharp vines or thorny vines.
I think you get good at being a leg after a little while. So basically, if her mother, so she'd have to be faced backwards so that her hips could pivot as a knee, and she'd have to be facing backwards so that when her mum wanted to bend her leg, she'd just bend at the waist, and that would function just like a bending leg. Yeah. How could you tell me just maybe a daily adventure her mother may take?
Well, here's the thing: her mother was a devout hiker.
Oh, okay.
Especially in the state of Washington, where there are a lot of trees and hills.
A lot of trails. But good times out there for the trail walkers, unless, of course, your function was to support your mother's upper body. Must have been hard, because I'm sure you've thought this through. Magdalena would have had to essentially jump with both her legs together to function as a step. I mean, I think we can only be thankful that her mother at least had one leg, because I think it would be hard to synchronize Magdalena and her brother or sister. What's one of her brothers and sisters' names?
I think you mean Marilyn. Magdalena is the legless mother.
Yes, of course. What was one of the names of Marilyn Turnbull's brothers or sisters who may have, had this situation gone awry, had to function as the other leg?
Rex.
And just out of interest, did her mother ever later in her life, for example, lose her other leg and both legs had to be replaced by children?
No, in a twist of fate, she actually gained 2 additional legs.
She gained 2 legs. I was just thinking this through, and as Marilyn reached full height, it would have meant that her mother was tottering almost on stilts. And also, one of her legs would be considerably larger than the other, unless, of course, Marilyn walked on her own knees to function as her mother's leg. But I think we may have gone down far enough down that rabbit hole. So we can stop there. Do you want to add any more, or shall we read some letters before we finish up?
I think we should read some letters. I think that pretty much covers it. They came from Washington, and Maude's mother spent a good portion of her childhood as a limb.
That's silly.
Human leg.
It's a very silly story. So here we go. So we got some very nice letters and thumbs up as the Statman said earlier. We just got that one rotter with a thumbs down, but I'm going to assume they just leant on the keyboard accidentally. Nobody would actually give the Maudecast a thumbs down.
No.
And I would warn anyone out there thinking about doing that, you do not want the Statman on your trail. He's going to be checking ISPs for the rest of the week, so if it is you might be sweating. Anyway, we got a letter from someone called Gingham Poofs, and Gingham asked, if Maude were to be reborn, as an animal, what would she be of?
What would she be of?
I'm just reading it, quoting it word for word. If Maude were to be reborn, and an animal, what would she be of?
It's a good question overall. It's a tricky one. Maybe a horse.
A horse is a very powerful animal and a very powerful signifier. It's a symbol for a lot of good stuff. But why would Maude be reborn as a horse? I mean, the whole thing would offend her because she's clearly a Christian, not a Buddhist. But let's imagine she put that aside and was able to be reborn as an animal. Why a horse, Nathan?
Well, I've now changed my mind to dolphin.
Okay, good.
Horse. The initial idea for a horse was because they are gentle and loyal and strong.
Yes.
And but now I've changed to dolphin because it just seems to be crying out to me.
Instinctive. There's just something about dolphins that make you think of Maude. Is it because they got that pointy nose, like her pointy lip, or is it because they're slippery and they slip fast through the water?
Maybe. I think the first thing you said, and also they tend to be generally quite nice.
You hear a lot of stories of dolphins doing nice things, don't you?
Yeah, they seem pleasant. They seem like they're just getting on with the day, as is Maude.
Yeah, okay. I'll buy that for $1, as Magdalena Turnbull might say, when out on a shopping spree. Here's another one, the last one that I'll read for today before we go into our song to wrap to take us home. This one's not got any name. What are you doing, mate? Are you mashed at the end of your head or summit? What even is this or out?
Is that real?
No comment. What are you doing, mate? Are you mashed at the end of your head or summit? What is this or out? What's our official response to that?
I think we're going to have to concede this one. We'll have to we'll just say yes and say we agree with him.
All right, no name. If you want to come back and clarify your point, we're here for you. If not, it's time for us to move on to a segment we call The Song at the End, that we don't have a name for the segment yet. However, who wants to go first?
You.
All righty, let's do this. Reading Invitation at the Breakfast Table.
Mordacious Viddles.
Swartzwelder having a beef-a-thon.
Magdalena Turnbull.
Sinister pharmacist.
Leftorium Fabulous.
Burn your tie noose on the barbecue netty.
Maude loves Nell.
Here, have a wishbone, it is fun. Fun.
She landed on her head.
Ooh, what a shame. Agree with a smile.
Limbless maternal grandparents.
Limbless maternal grandparents.
Limbless maternal grandparents.
Limbless maternal grandparents.
Rod and Todd.
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 I got
Rod Todd.
Get it. 72 hours. Straight recording. We completed podcast episode 5. Who would have even didn't it funk it? The end.
Yes, the end.